Hey everybody, welcome. Mark Westcott here, and today, great to have on board Lisa Lonsdale from Lonsdale Agribusiness. G'day, Lisa.
Hello, how you going, Mark?
Yeah, great, thanks. We first met at Monto sometime last year, didn't we? At one of their trade days up there in the hall, and but you've been very busy, and I know you've just been to Beef Week. But first of all, let's just talk about what it is that you do. You're very heavily involved in the agricultural industry, work with producers, finance proposals, asset purchases, financial reporting, and property and strategic planning, and so on. And you must be very popular, because when I put up the post last week about having you on as my guest today, I mean, there's likes and comments coming in everywhere from people in regard to the fact that they'd be looking forward to seeing you today. So great to have you on board. And do you want to just give us a bit of a background in regard to how you got started in the business? I thought you must have been an accountant, but that's not so.
Well, thanks for having me, Mark. My background's rural lending, so I was started in that back in 2005. So I did that for nearly 10 years. And then I decided to start up my own business at the March 2015, when I could just see there's a lot of businesses that are quite in tune with what they're doing, but just with a bit of outside help and a third party looking at it, obviously with no my role is essentially looking into a new set of eyes from a financial lending point of view, but just to plan, like where everyone, I noticed when I was in the banking side of things, we're all so busy rushing, getting everything done. It just helps to plan out the next 2 to 5 years at least to see where they want to take the business, whether that's incorporating new family members as they come home from uni or different things. And yeah, just as things progress, and it's in a great time to be in agriculture at the moment. So, how do we expand, and how do we take the best scenario to their financier so they know exactly, even if their bank manager's changing all the time, they've got someone that's working with their business all the time to keep everyone in check and going forward.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the key things for you, is that you don't have a vested interest, do you? You're not working for a bank. You're not sort of looking at it just purely from bank's point of view. You really are independent, and you are working for the grazier, the farmer, sort of not working against them, and which is an important differentiation, I believe.
Yes, I deliberately went down that path of servicing and working with the client to show that obviously a successful business makes my business successful. So I never registered to be a broker or anything like that, because I want to do more than just finance applications. It's about working business plans out with the clients, and exactly being that third party role to bring success and work out what's actually going forward with the business. And it's working well.
Yeah, and I guess the fact that you're not sitting there referring one banker or lender over another. There's no commission involved. You just charge the clients a fee, and for you, it's really very much a case of, if you do a good job for them, you'll keep getting engaged, and so you get paid for results, which is a great way to have your business.
Yeah, I was humbling. Like I've got clients that have started with me from the beginning, and we've worked out a plan of how to expand their business, and they're onto their second or third property in this 5 to 6 years. So it's very rewarding to see what their achievements have been, and being part of it. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about just before we started this morning was one of the great advantages you bring to the table, Lisa, is that you're from outside the family, and you bring a fresh set of eyes, and it's always, as I say to my clients, it's much easier. There's a lot of things in family businesses you can't fix from within,
Yes.
because I'm going to come to this word communication again in a minute, but yeah, you can't fix them from within, and you need someone from outside who can look at it with a fresh set of eyes, unbiased, untainted by family relationships and family squabbles and all that sort of stuff. And that's the great advantage you bring, is being able to come in fresh and see it from a helicopter point of view to start with, and then work down to find out how best to help those people.
Yeah, there's no emotion, and obviously, even with my own business, I know that I need other people to look at my business to assist me, and it's the same for when I'm helping them. There's no emotion. I can see it from a new set of eyes, and even from the communication piece. I've done a lot of work in personalities and different things to work out where everyone's coming from, and it's just sometimes having that person outside the family explaining it how my personal view, and I'm not saying it's right, but it's just a different angle, and where they may have been reading something wrong from another family member. It's just a total misinterpretation of communication, and it's just that's great just to break it down.
Communication, it's just one of the such important words. I do another podcast, as you probably know, Estate and Succession Mastery with Juanita Maiden. Nice cup too, by the way. Put your own name on it and everything.
Yes.
But I do a podcast each week with Juanita regarding estate and succession mastery issues, and we actually take bets to see how quickly the word communication comes up each week when we're talking about that sort of thing, because without thinking about it, it just comes up all the time as being so important. And in family businesses especially, that's one of the greatest things that you'd find would be stumbling blocks, is when mum and dad and the next generation or the generation above really struggle with communication. And it's your opportunity is to open up that communication and start the dialogue to help people make progress.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm from a family, rural family as well. So like my father's in his 70s, so I completely understand from my generation of how communication can be difficult at times. And I use that practical experience that I have, to do this, and that's why it's not just about the finance side of these businesses. It is the communication and relationships, and realistically, we've got to get that right before we proceed.
Yeah. So, Lisa, what sort of tools do you use? Do you use any of the online tools to help people work out what their personality types, their instinctive method types are, so that you can help people build better communication? Like, do you use the Myers-Briggs or Colby or anything like that? Is that something you've been involved in?
No, because I don't. Like, I know all about it for my own things, but essentially what I do, it's just about having the conversations, working out, obviously where everyone stands, and having those conversations to the side, and then putting it together. And essentially, I work with like the likes of yourself or different succession planners to do that side of it. And I'm more focusing on the finance side, or I do just a couple of different family meetings, just essentially to get the communication going in the first place before we go down the road any further.
Yep. So I just wanted, there's three questions here. I just want to start by asking those. And one of them is, whilst you can understand people's personalities and where they're situated in the business, it's vital at sort of at what point do you start to discuss the business viability within the family? I mean, when do you start sort of bringing out the financials and help people understand whether or not it's viable for extra family members to come in or not come in? Where does that sit with you?
Oh, look, I think if there's no such thing as never too early, especially if you've got more than one child that wants to come back on the land, or even just so they're a part of it, whether they're teenagers or early 20s, just so they understand, even if they don't want to come back to the family business. I don't think the discussion hurts, just so they understand why their parents are making the decisions that they are at the time. It sets them up for their future so they can make the decision. So I push for it as soon as possible. And I suppose that's why I say, stop working on your business and start working in your business, and start working on it, just to see where it's going. Because I mean, if the business is unviable now, there's no let's draw a line in the sand and see which direction it needs to go going forward. So
yeah.
Excuse me, beef week cough, but no,
just a beef week cough.
Well, that's it. I just think it's important. We can do so much work on plans, and if we haven't calculated if it's financially viable. It's another emotional toll towards all the family communication and what's going forward. That's not needed.
Yeah. How early do you think is appropriate to start talking about money and the financial position with the kids? Do you find most of them are switched off early and wait? It's not until they're further down the track that they really want to know that, or is it something you bring up early with them so that everyone understands? Because money does make the business run around.
It does. I've got some clients where their teenagers are aware of it. They probably don't want to. They see it as a boring thing, but most recently, I've got a few different families. They've got children in their early 20s and they're wanting to start to see it. And I've started to break it down and put it into a simplified spreadsheet so they can see what the business is doing. And I think it's working well for some of these. The next generation didn't realise where the business was at, so it's good coming from a third party to explain exactly how it all is. We sit down, we do cattle numbers because a lot of the kids are obviously involved hands-on in the business, in the yards or doing those kind of things. So to explain what's happening behind the scenes, I think it's good.
Yeah, look, absolutely. The point is, I guess, and when it comes back to personality styles and so on, some kids are going to be less interested in the numbers, aren't they? And they're going to be more interested in getting out there and, working the cattle and doing things practically around the property, around the farm. And whereas others are going to be very, very interested in the numbers and so on. So I guess it's trying to understand who's got the strengths in which area. Do you have Lisa, do you have specific questions that you ask family members to help them get the communication going within the family?
I do. Well, I do, and it's case by case, to be honest. Once you've had that initial meeting with the family, and sometimes it's even just planting the seed of wanting to know what they want out of their business, or even meeting with me, just so it might be. Like I've had meetings where it's gone for 2 or 3 hours and it's not until the last half an hour that we finally got to the bottom of what's really on their mind or working out what's going on. But key questions that I probably ask is where they see themselves, their roles in the business. I think that's a key one. What their responsibilities are and where they see the other partners or the people within the business, where they see their responsibilities and roles.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to make, just get the conversation, making them start think of, where the business is and where it's going.
Yeah. One of the things, I found, Lisa, is, in the succession planning conversations I have with clients is having all the people sit around the table together for me is, I've found it to be a waste of time because mum and dad will say what they want to say. The quiet kids will just sit in the corner, and then when the meeting's over, they'll be mumbling about how their thoughts weren't heard, even though they never said anything. But and because it's mum and dad, there's kids that'll be respectful and just say yes to whatever mum and dad say. And occasionally there'll be kids that really do stick up, and the louder ones, and they'll say what they're thinking, and so their ideas get across. So you're not always picking up all the information from all the children when you have the family meetings. And I'm just wondering if you've ever taken people off individually and sort of chatted with them rather than always doing it in a group environment.
No, I prefer to get to know the family members separately to start with. Even if they do want a group family meeting, I think it's important that everyone has their own time one-on-one to discuss what they're really thinking, because I agree with you. That's exactly what happens when you have a full meeting with everybody. And, it's also, it's the other thing that you come across, and it's just experience. You can't rush it all, but, like son-in-laws or daughter-in-laws, they always feel that they're not part of the family sometimes, and how to communicate it as well. So allowing them to have their piece. And the other thing is, families are terrible at, you know a lot what the other ones are thinking, so sometimes they don't communicate it, whereas the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law obviously doesn't have the same connection of thoughts. So then there's all this overthinking that's done when we just got to communicate it out in a safe environment by themselves, and then you can break down what the actual issue is. And it's like the rock in the shoe. It's the small issues that you've got to clear first rather than the big ones. That's how I've noticed.
I like that, the rock in the shoe, but it's very true, isn't it? Yeah, it's the little tiny thing that creates the greatest irritation and stops any forward progress. And look, one of the other things we touched on before we started today was, what you're doing these days, Lisa, is you're really helping people understand where they're at in regard to their business. More than an accountant ever would. You're actually helping them develop their strategies and where to focus in regard to the business moving forward and so on. And we were just reflecting on how 20 years ago nobody did this sort of stuff. I mean, I used the example of nowadays, you've got people out there taking soil samples to work out what fertilizer you need to put in your ground, and even on cattle farms, sheep farms, and so on. You can work out how to make what you have better by just doing some analysis. People now put their rams, their bulls in at certain dates only for a certain period of time, whereas in the past, it was kind of open slather, and people are much more technical and much more advanced in regard to how they manage their properties, their farms these days. There's so much more information that there's so much more technical knowledge, and 1% here or 1% there can make a huge difference to the final outcome. And so, do you mind just talking about your experience over the years that you've been involved, the changes you've noticed, and the opportunity that people have these days to really treat their farm as a business rather than just sort of, what are we going to do this week?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And example of it all. Like, firstly, 20 years ago, like the ag industry's totally changed. We were going through the millennium drought back then. Times were tough. And, there wasn't the spare cash that's available at the moment. And a lot of people were just surviving on the land. A lot of people's children actually had to get off the land because the business just simply couldn't afford to bring them back in. Whereas, the hype of ag these days, it's just wonderful to see that everyone wants to get back into it, and it is fashionable to be part of it. And with technology, and I think that comes with, wages in Australia are so high. So you kind of have to be on the technology bandwagon to see as the cost, you go back the last 20 years compared to the price of what we're receiving for our produce, it's certainly not at the same increase as what our costs have been. So once again, we've got to get smarter rather than working harder. Obviously they do that already, but it's about how to implement saving, as you said, the 1%ers. So where do we save costs? Not using fertilizer or chemical where we don't need to. The farming side of things is incredible what can be done there these days. And then on the grazing side, how do we increase our pregnancy rate? How do we, the 5% or 10% that we can increase these by, obviously it's the return. And you can see these people are looking into it. And I mean, we've just finished Beef Week of all the technology that's happening in the beef industry. It's wonderful to see. And, it's changing all the time. And I think, and that's what I always say to my clients, there's so many hats our producers wear. They're not just running a business. We've got an asset of the land. So, I mean, that's a business in itself of what the value of the land is. We've got to also work out the value of the business that's been run on that land and how to improve that or continue to expand, as well as, it's your life. So once again, it's your home. And, a lot of them obviously are raising families. There's a lot of different hats in comparison to a business in town, for example. And that's where, you can get caught up on the day-to-day stuff and where we need to have, we work with our bankers, our accountants and third-party specialists to bring the, business forward. That's how I see it. That was a ramble, but yeah.
No, it wasn't a ramble at all. No, No, you're on here so you can talk and say what your thoughts are, Lisa, and I'm appreciating them. You know, when you touch on technology, I mean, for example, I know my brother on the property up in North Queensland where they live, you know, God forbid he actually looks at his iPhone now and he can work out how much water's in the dams and the troughs and so on. Like, who would have? That's all the stuff that's now available, and you know, all the graziers can pick up their phone, and there's so much information about you know, what's happening on their farm, on their property. You know, so that's a cost saving in itself. So you don't have to drive around the run every couple of days to check the waters, because you know, you've probably got a camera on a pole beside the dam. You know, you've got something coming back to you on your phone to tell you how much you know, how much water's in the troughs and so on. You can see if there's any bog sheep or whatever in the dam. A video camera technology is just making it so much more efficient and so on. I mean, I always get amazed going to these days when, you know, they talk about how cattle now just. I mean, this is old news to everyone, but I mean, you know, back in the day, you'd guess what weight the cattle were. Now they just walk through a race, and because they've got an ear tag on, you can mark, you know exactly how much weight that cow or that steer has put on since last time they walked through the race. They're being weighed and tagged and so on. I mean, that sort of stuff is just, you know, mine. If you told someone 20 years ago that that's the sort of technology they'd have, believe you, would they?
Yeah, well, it's wonderful, and you know, you've got the planning ability of having, you know, knowing what the markets are weight-wise and having the stock available, you know, with the recording systems and everything. You know exactly when they're going to be ready, give or take, and you know, you're not selling. And the other thing is, having all this and having a plan is essentially you're controlling your business again. You're not just selling when the interest is due or when the bills, you know, like we've got a plan. Yeah, you know, take control, have the ownership back on you for how your business is going. And with technology, as you said, it allows you to do that. And if we can have this forward plan, accountants are great. Like, I mean, obviously no one likes to pay extra tax, and we hear about that regularly from everybody, but you know, we've got to look forward. We can't just be looking back, and that's sometimes if you're not getting the feedback from your figures, there's no point, you know, like it's wasting time. So we've got to project and we've got to look forward.
Yep, absolutely, and well said. Now, you're a great example of this. So my next question to you is women in the industry these days. And, you know, when I go out to, you know, the past few years when I've spoken at the Young Beef Producers Forums and so on out at Roma, the number of women, young ladies who turn up is just phenomenal. In fact, it's probably more than the young guys that turn up these days. And the girls actually seem to have more enthusiasm for what's going on at those sessions than in a lot of cases the guys do. So the women that are coming back onto the land are very motivated, interested, and wanting to show that they're just as capable in a lot of areas that the men have been in the past. Your thoughts on the trend back towards more women coming onto the land? The farm's not just being handed on to the eldest son these days. It really is an opportunity for everyone to be able to stick their hand up and say they want to come back, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think rather than having it as a gender thing, let's just have it of the skills based and who's interested in it. You know, I'm a family of 2 daughters, but it wasn't ever it didn't matter what gender you were. It's about who was willing to have a go. And I think that's what, you know, going forward, that's how we have to see it. It's wonderful to see the girls are coming back onto the land, and it shouldn't matter whether male or female who gets the place. It's about what skills you have and bring them to the business.
Well, what interest too, Lisa, isn't it? It's not just about the skills. It's who wants to stand up and stick their hand up and say, you know, give me a go, I'm ready.
Exactly, and I think that's what we have to concentrate on, rather than who's the eldest, they should get it. No, what can you bring to the table, and do it that way.
I'm actually agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you here. I'm actually saying it's great to see the trend away from the, you know, the eldest naturally just automatically getting it, but also, and it's not just that, it's the fact that more women do want to come back onto the land now, which I think is a really positive thing.
Yeah, but it's great. And, like, obviously, there's going to be some things that women can't do. And it's not about proving yourself. It's about work, as you said before, about your capabilities. And let's know what we can do as a team.
Yep. Lisa, this is fascinating stuff that you're talking about. Let me just ask you the question: where do you, how do people normally engage you? Where do they find you? What are the sorts of things that you find are the quick wins for potential new clients for you? So if someone was sitting here and they're watching this and they're saying, "Wow, I haven't heard of Lisa and Lonsdale Agribusiness before, but wow, I like what she's saying." How can you be valuable to them in the quickest time frame, I guess, is my question to you.
That's a very good question.
I do have good questions occasionally.
I'm on all the social media platforms, so you'll be able to Google my name and you'll be able to get in contact with me. To be honest, I do case by case, so it's very it's better to have a conversation with me rather than just seeing what I'm advertising on my website. So if you've got family, even if you just want a quick financial health check over your business, just to see, as we were saying before, of having that non-emotional attachment to the business and having a look, whether it's just structure of your lending to make sure that that's being done correctly, or if anything needs to be changed there, how to incorporate new members into the business. If you're wanting to expand, are you there yet? Like, just a quick overview so you know if you've got the numbers or what you need to do to expand to go into your next property or diversify. It's all, we can have the conversation and give some feedback from there. And depending on what you want to do, it's the time frame of how quickly, or if it's going to be a longer term thing.
Sure. Look, I'm sure, Lisa, you've got some sort of checklist or scorecard or something that people can go through, which is a bit, like a tick the box. Does this apply to you? Or, a list of questions that you probably have that people can go through and just to see they're a good fit and so on. But the sort of work you're doing, I really applaud the role you play, because you're not a banker, you're not an accountant, you're an independent person who can come without any hidden agenda and look inside a business while everyone else is working. While everyone else is working on the business in the family, you can look at the business from a helicopter view and work out how to make the business more efficient, effective, the relationships in the family, and so on, and help them expand and grow and create some efficiencies and so on, which maybe they can't see for themselves. So it's a great role that you're playing there. So Lisa, thanks for being involved today. I've loved having the chat with you. It was good to meet you when we did last year up in Monto, and I look forward to maybe seeing you at other rural functions around Queensland and so on in the near future. But thank you very much for your time today, and anybody that wants to have a chat with Lisa, I can highly recommend her capability, her integrity, and her results. So thanks for that, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Have a good week.